What is up, guys? I am currently doing a Unranked to Masters challenge where I'm only playing off-meta junglers.
What did he say?
So we're playing stuff like Ryze, EZREAL, Gnar, Urgot, anything that is not conventionally in the jungle or not currently meta or considered a jungler. And no, of course, I am not trolling. I have a system where I tested the champions in the practice tool first to see if the first clear is even possible. So our metric is if the clear isn't possible, we don't play them in ranked. If it is possible, we do test them in a game first, and if it's decent, if it feels okay, then we put it into the main champion pool and play ranked. It's really important for me to not troll my teammates, so just because it's an off-meta pick doesn't mean that I'm gonna troll or run down the games or, you know, be an anchor and ruin the game for everyone. That is really important to me, and also really important that you guys know that. We do have some funky picks though, so stay tuned. It's gonna be a blast. If this project also takes off, I am planning on also including meta champions, but with off-meta builds. So for example, AP Xin Zhao or Crit Olaf, that kind of stuff. Currently, we are already at day 5, and we started off with Malzahar, Cho'gath, and EZREAL. How I chose these champions was just by pure luck or RNG, whatever. I typed in all my champions from the main champion pool and then let a picker wheel choose 1 AD, 1 tank, and 1 AP champion. So I can always rotate around and, like I said, hopefully not grief my team with the wrong choice. So because this is mainly for content, but also for actual testing, seeing what works best, I thought it would be good to not just have 1 or 2 games, because you can be unlucky or super lucky with your team, and it might have been completely irrelevant what kind of champion you pick, right? So I thought at least 10 games would be sufficient to get a feeling for, does this champion work or not? Because in 10 games, I think you have to be super unlucky or super lucky to always have the winning or the losing team without your champion and your playstyle having an effect on that team. Therefore, it is 10 games per champion before we rotate to the next 3 champions. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of the champions we've played so far. We had 11 games on Malzahar and 11 games on EZREAL and 10 games on Cho'gath. Why 11? Because in both the case of Malzahar and EZREAL, we both have one game where we had an AFK in the enemy team or in our own team at like minute 3 or 4. And that personally for me doesn't really count as a full game, because that says nothing about the champion or the build that we tried. Because someone just it was just instantly over, right? It's kind of boring. So I didn't count it as a win or a loss and just said 1 more game. I think the biggest surprise here, shocker, was EZREAL, and it started off rough because we didn't really have the right build yet. I went full lethality, full damage in the first 2 games, I think. That did not feel that great, honestly, because you are super vulnerable to invades. You're not that strong in a 1v1. You're very dependent on your team for the engage. Didn't feel great. Then I started picking up Cyclo Sword and Trinity, and that felt great. After that, Black Cleaver, Spear of Shojin, Death Dance, Maw of Mertius. That felt amazing, actually. Especially the Volcaic Cyclo Sword. Sorry for butchering these names. But yeah, especially that item first gives EZREAL a lot of momentum and agency, because you can slow with the Q and you can really kite very well. So with press the attack and the Cyclo Sword, you're strong in a 1v1. You can defend yourself if you get invaded. You can, when you gank, slow people if you're good mechanically and hit your Qs. Of course, you still have to hit your abilities or get in closer range and auto attack them to slow them. Then more burst with the Trinity, but also some tankiness. And after that, you can kind of adapt to what your team needs or what you need in terms to play against the enemy team comp, right? And then we started cooking. Then we started being a little bit more creative. And I thought about the Stridebreaker build. It looks stupid. It doesn't make sense in theory, because you don't want to be in melee range, right? With EZREAL, obviously. But it's crazy. The clear is a lot faster with the Tiamat component and with the AoE damage that your auto attacks and your Qs do. And it's so good to kite. You're a little bit more tanky, and it's just really comfortable that if someone jumps on you, like a Lee Sin, if you fight against a Lee Sin or a Viego and they get close to you, you just use your Stridebreaker, and it does have a bigger range than people think. Like, it's not super melee range. You slow them, use the Stridebreaker, E out, and then you can kite them forever. Other than that, I think EZREAL struggles a lot with the clear. The first clear is, you need a lot of APM, you need to kite, you need to be able to manage your movement, your auto attacks. It's harder to F-tab around to watch the other waves because you have to be focused on your clear. It's pretty slow. It's not terrible, but it's also not great. You have to be super careful with invades because you will be fairly low HP and your E has a high cooldown. You only have the Q, you don't skill your W. So yeah, the early is sketchy. You don't really have strong ganks. You can't really force anything and you're pretty terrible on objectives. Drake is fine with your W because your W works on Drake. It doesn't sadly work on any of the camps, not even the Scuttlecraft, which is sad and makes your clear that slow. But on Drake it works pretty decently and you can fairly easily take Drake alone and fairly fast. On Grubs it just sucks. On Grubs, just don't do Grubs on Ezreal, which is really a downside because Grubs can be a huge advantage, right, and a huge objective. It's just not great on Ezreal. Just don't even try. Unless you get help or unless you're super fed early with good items. That pretty much covers it for Ezreal. Let's go to Malzahar. Malzahar is a utility champion in my opinion. Don't try to go full AP. Of course you can if you want to. The thing is, I don't think he has the best AP scalings, and I feel his biggest use is peeling with his ult and his permanent Q's AoE silence, right? Then if you buy Rylai's, you also have a slow on the Q and the E, also pretty strong. And yeah, just flash engage with your ult or peel for your carry with your ult. I think that's the biggest upside of Malzahar. Plus, once you get through the super sketchy early clear, which is not that easy or not that straightforward, and you're also very, very susceptible to invades, just like Ezreal. Probably even more so, because with Ezreal you at least have E to escape. With Malzahar you have nothing. If you get invaded, you're screwed. So be really careful of that. But yeah, anyways, I would say that is probably the biggest weakness. But once you do have your first back and you get Faded Ashes or even more, and you eventually finish Blackfire Torch or Liandry's, man, your clear is golden. You're gonna zoom through the jungle. You can E a camp, use your W, get the little voidlings, and already move on to the next camp. It's kind of like Yorick. So it does get really good. You start ramping up really fast once you get some items, and if you don't get invaded, it is a solid pick. One thing I really liked about Malzahar is that no matter how far I fall behind, I feel like I will be useful for my team, right? Even, like, yes, you can get invaded and it can suck. Like, it can be really ugly and unpleasant to play. But if your team is doing fine, don't give up. Just try to find farm somewhere, try to get your level 6, and then start using your ult on targets where they either don't have a lot of escape or where your teammates are strong on the lanes. And try to build as much ultimate cooldown as you can in your items and in your runes, and then just start running around the map ulting people and looking for engages. The cool thing is, even if you're 110 and you're completely taken out of the game, and even if you're 2 levels lower and 1 item behind, and it just feels miserable, you still will be useful for your team. Because the Q, the AoE silence, can be huge in critical moments. You know, you can stop big fights or big abilities with your silence. You can peel for your AD carry with your ult. Like, there's still so much you can do even if you fall behind, because damage is not your most important stat. That's at least how I interpret it and how I played it, and it worked pretty well. We had a pretty decent win rate overall. Sadly, we had some AFKs and some people that didn't like the pick and, you know, trolled and griefed. That's probably the biggest problem with the off-meta project anyways. People pre-tilt in the lobby or in the game before the game even started, and they don't like my pick, so they run it down on purpose. So we would have won and had an even higher win rate on Malzahar if that didn't happen. But, you know, shoulda, woulda, coulda. The build is also very straightforward. You don't have to, like, learn a lot or think a lot about it. It's usually the same items. It's usually even the same order of items. And the champion in itself is very, very easy and straightforward. Nothing really to learn, no crazy mechanics. The only thing that is a little bit difficult and scary is the first clear and the first 3-4 levels until you have Faded Ashes or even more. That's pretty much it. In any case, I would say decent pick, viable. You can definitely play Malzahar in the jungle. Just be aware of the drawbacks and try not to tilt if it doesn't go well early. Overall, I would say it's definitely decent though, and you can play it. And then we're coming to the big dinosaur. Cho'gath, absolutely solid. Like, in crazy how good the champion actually is. I don't know if it always was like this, but you could literally play this guy in almost every elo up until, like, probably Masters. He has a decent clear, he scales pretty well. Not the craziest late game, especially because he's so easy to kite and he walks very slowly, but you can compensate that in the runes and with the build a little bit. There's, speaking of build, there's multiple things you can buy. There's a plethora of items that work well together on Cho'gath. You can go full AP, hybrid, full tank, doesn't really matter. Almost everything works, and you can just adapt your build to whatever you enjoy, your playstyle, enemy team comp, or your own team, what they need. The only thing I haven't tried is something like AD or crit or attack speed Cho'gath. I don't know if that works. I would not recommend it for now. I haven't tested it, but yeah, there's a lot of choice and flexibility here, which I usually very much like. Overall, the champion is just so good. I think the biggest points are the objective control. Like, there's so many team fights right now in season 15, beginning of the season, with all the new like things you want to do, getting the feats and having the Atakan objective up. Like, you're going from objective to objective, right? So it's really nice that you have a very good kit for team fights. You have the AoE silence, you have AoE knockup, very low cooldown, so you can spam this stuff around your team and make sure that either peel for your team or you set up a team fight, and there's just so much you can do. And then during the objectives, of course, the R is just so OP. It's like similar to Nunu. It is unbelievably hard to steal a objective away from Cho'gath, right? I think it's 1,200 damage, true damage on the objective on level 6, which is insane because your smite will still be at 600. And later on, you can go up to like 1,600 damage. Like, it's impossible to really mess up your smite there. So you have a lot of control over objectives, which is very important in the current state of the game. One thing I don't really like that much though, it's easier to connect your CC with a lane that has CC itself. So imagine a Pantheon top lane or a Leona Rel bot lane or Nautilus, whatever, what have you, and then follow up with your CC when you gank. Because you are very slow and you don't have any ways or means to get over walls, your ganks are very linear and quite straightforward. If people ward well or disengage early, you can't really force a gank and you can't really make a play because you can't gap close to them, and pretty much all of your CC is great in a teamfight scenario, but easy to dodge if they see it coming. Overall, probably the best jungler so far though. I mean, only 3 champions, but it felt great. It was that close for me to say this is an actual jungler. I think he has only a few drawbacks that might make him not meta, but I can recommend playing this with a clean conscience, 100%. If you're a Cho'gath main on top lane or AP Cho'gath in mid and you get autofilled in jungle, don't worry about it. It'll like totally fine. After 5 days and 11 games on EZREAL, 11 games on Malzahar, and 10 games on Cho'gath, these right here are the overall win rates. A little side note here, we did have a lot of games where we got griefed, where we had literal AFKs, disconnects, or someone that trolled because of my pick in the jungle with Malzahar or EZREAL. So it's not 100% representative. It's a small sample size, and I wish I had more games, like 100 games per champion, to really show how good or bad it is. But except for the EZREAL pick, I think the win rates are fairly decently represented. The EZREAL is a little bit low, and it shouldn't be that low because we did get griefed mostly on that champion, and we also needed a couple games to figure out how to play this champ and how to, like, first of all, I'm not a good AD carry. Second of all, I've never played EZREAL before. Third, we didn't really know what kind of build to build, right? What kind of items to build. And now that we figured that out and got a little bit better with the mechanics and how the champion actually works, and when to gank, when to farm, that kind of stuff, like a little power spikes, it got better and better and more comfortable playing the champion, and it felt like it's better than the win rate now suggests. Overall, as you can see, we made 92 LP total with EZREAL, which is funny because we only have a 36% win rate, but we are still at a very, very good MMR, so we lose a lot less LP than we gain. Malzahar with a 55% win rate, we gained 91 LP, and then last but certainly not least, we have Cho'gath coming in with 131 LP plus and a 60% win rate. We started in, I think, Silver 3 or Silver 2 after the placements, and we are now already sitting at Gold 2 with like 90 LP or something. So let's get Platinum with the next 3 champions. That is pretty much it from me today. Those were the first 5 days. That's the entire idea of the project. If you have any questions, please don't ever hesitate. Drop a comment down below, swing by the stream and just, shoot a message there. Ask me on any of the socials. I will gladly get back to you and answer any questions that you have. Well, league related. And also, if you have some insights, you're an OTP of the champions I'm playing, you have advice for builds or mechanics or any tricks or cheese stats, just let me know. I would love to learn as much as I can about all of these champions, and then at the end of the entire project, reevaluate and make a list and a ranking, and maybe even a guide for anyone else that wants to follow along and play similar play styles or builds or champions in the jungle. Can't wait for day 6, 3 new champions. We have a long road to go until Masters, but there's a lot of cool champions coming up and a lot of good content, I hope.